All right, welcome back to the deep dive. You ready for this one? I have to say this deep dive is a little different.
Yeah, this one's a bit out there.
It's definitely a curveball. Our listener wants us to really dig into this crazy election scenario where, get this, Donald Trump wins a second term.
Against Kamala Harris, no
Yeah,
less.
against Kamala Harris. And the source we're working with, it's this business and finance newsletter. And let me tell you, it is chock full of twists and turns. I mean, the implications go way beyond like Wall Street.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're talking shock waves across, well, pretty much every sector you can think of.
Buckle up, folks. So I think the first thing that jumps out is everyone is talking about those tariffs Trump kept bringing up on the campaign trail. You know, the whole Make America Great Again, boost American manufacturing thing.
Right, right, the tariffs.
But this newsletter, it dives into the potential downside for, well, the average person, like you and me.
Yeah, and basically it boils down to this. Tariffs sound good on paper, but the reality is they often lead to higher prices for, well, for everything.
Like, how does that even work?
Think of it like a chain reaction, right?
Yeah.
When you slap tariffs on foreign goods, it's not like those businesses just eat the cost.
So they just pass it along.
They pass it on.
Yeah.
From the importers to the wholesalers, the retailers, and then bam, right to you, the consumer.
So, like, I go to buy a new TV after the election, and boom, suddenly it's $100 more expensive. Not exactly the celebration I was hoping for.
No, not exactly. And we're not just talking TVs here. This newsletter cites a Yale economist who predicts price increases on everything.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. Clothes, electronics, food, even cars.
Wow, that's rough. So how bad are we talking?
The economist, he estimates anywhere from 1.5 to over 5%.
Ouch. Okay, so maybe not the best news for our wallets in this alternate reality, but you know who's probably doing okay? Elon Musk.
Ah, yes. Elon Musk, our favorite disruptor.
The newsletter reports that Tesla's stock, it just skyrocketed like 15% after the election results came in.
Added a cool 21 billion to his net worth.
Billion with a B.
It's like he's playing a different game entirely.
It really is. Most experts are saying a second Trump term would be a rough ride for the EV industry.
Oh, absolutely. But Tesla, they seem to be, I don't know, immune. Like they're defying gravity or something.
So what's the logic there? Why is Tesla different?
Well, it seems the market sees Tesla as, well, a safe bet, even amidst the turmoil. They're the leader, they've got the brand recognition, the customer loyalty.
Right, right. So almost like a flight to safety. The riskier the market gets, the better Tesla looks.
You got it. But here's where it gets really interesting. The newsletter throws out this wild idea
Oh, I love the wild ideas.
of Musk potentially heading up a brand new Department of Government Efficiency under Trump.
Wait, what?
You heard that right, Department of Government Efficiency.
And what's this department supposed to do?
Buckle up. Their goal is to slash, get this, $2 trillion from the federal budget.
2 trillion. Is that even possible?
It's a bold proposition, to say the least. And the details are, shall we say, a bit sparse. The newsletter doesn't exactly specify which programs or departments would be on the chopping block.
Or like, what the consequences would be.
Right, exactly. We're talking potential job losses, disruption of essential services, all kinds of potential ripple effects across the economy. It's not a simple equation.
So let's play this out. Say Musk does become the efficiency czar. Does he even have the know-how to handle something like this? I mean, he's a genius with rockets and electric cars, but government, that's a whole other beast.
It's a valid question for sure. Musk's track record is impressive. He's all about innovation and, well, disruption.
Yeah, he's definitely not afraid to shake things up.
But navigating the federal government, that's a whole different ballgame. You're talking entrenched interests, political maneuvering, a whole level of scrutiny that's just different from anything he's dealt with before.
You know, it's tempting to think, what if? What if he could actually make the system work better? But then there's that other voice saying, do we really want to give that much power to someone who's basically used to doing things his own way?
It's the classic outsider versus the establishment dilemma. And it speaks to a broader issue that this newsletter touches on, the role of wealth and influence in shaping political outcomes.
Oh, yeah. We got to talk about the billionaires. This is where things get juicy. The newsletter gives us this fascinating glimpse into how the ultra-rich reacted to Trump's victory, and it's like night and day between the conservative and liberal camps.
Like two completely different parties playing out on social media.
Exactly, and it highlights this trend that's been building for years. The growing clout of billionaires in the political arena. They've got the money for unlimited donations.
And they've got the platforms to reach a massive audience.
It's like they're creating their own media empires to shape public opinion.
And they're doing it very effectively. The Forbes analysis in this newsletter really drives that point home. They looked at the top 200 richest Americans and their posts on X about the election.
Over 2,000 posts, racking up a combined 10 billion views. That's insane.
10 billion views. It just shows you the kind of reach these individuals have.
It's not even just about endorsements or attack ads anymore. It's about setting the agenda, controlling the narrative.
Shaping the way people think about the issues.
It's subtle, but it's incredibly powerful, and it raises some serious questions about transparency and accountability.
How much sway do these billionaires really have? Are they using their platforms responsibly?
Yeah, are we even playing on a level playing field anymore?
These are questions we need to be asking, especially as this trend continues to grow.
For sure. It's like we're witnessing the rise of a new kind of power elite, and it's not clear where it's all headed. Speaking of power, let's talk about how the markets reacted to Trump's surprise victory.
Well, from the looks of it, the markets are a bit of a mixed bag right now. A blend of optimism and apprehension, I'd say.
Yeah, the newsletter says that both the U.S. dollar and bond yields spiked after the election results came in. Bond yields. Help me out here. I'm not exactly a Wall Street whiz.
So think of bond yields like a measure of investor confidence. When yields go up, it generally means investors are feeling good about the economy. They're willing to pay more for U.S. debt.
So higher yields, good news.
Generally, yes. But here's the catch. Rising bond yields can also signal worries about inflation. It's like investors are saying, okay, the economy might be growing, but I'm also worried prices are going to skyrocket, so I need a higher return on my investment to make up for that risk.
It's a tug of war then between optimism and, well, fear.
Exactly. And then you factor in those tariffs we talked about earlier.
Right, right. Tariffs equal higher prices, which could lead to inflation.
It's a chain reaction.
Mm.
And while we saw those major stock indexes surge right after the election, Tesla, Wells Fargo, even Goldman Sachs making some big gains.
Right, there's that initial euphoria.
Yeah, there's this underlying uncertainty about whether that upward trend can really hold up in the long term.
And speaking of uncertainty, we can't forget about the potential impact on fintech. This newsletter suggests some major shakeups are coming in terms of banking regulations and changes to that, what is it, the CFPB?
The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, yeah. It was set up after the 2008 financial crisis to protect consumers from those predatory lending practices and shady financial products.
So like payday loans and that kind of thing?
Exactly. But Trump has historically been pretty critical of the CFPB. He argues that it stifles innovation and burdens businesses with unnecessary regulations.
So we're potentially looking at a period of deregulation.
It's certainly on the table. And depending on who you ask, that could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, one thing's for sure. Change is coming. And not just in the financial world. This newsletter lays out a whole bunch of policy areas that Trump is expected to focus on in his second term.
Oh, he's got a busy agenda.
It's ambitious, to say the least. We're talking immigration, Iran, the whole Russia-Ukraine situation.
And of course, let's not forget his favorite, oil and gas.
Right. His advisors are already talking about those controversial border policies and a big push for, drill, baby, drill.
It's like we're stepping back in time to 2016.
Except the world's a whole lot different now. The stakes are even higher.
And then there's this little nugget in the newsletter that really caught my eye. It's about this potential appointment Trump's considering. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for a prominent health role.
Wait, seriously? RFK Jr., the vaccine guy.
The one and only.
You're kidding, right?
Boy, I wish I were. But the newsletter claims he's in the running for a key position, which, considering his, shall we say, unconventional views on vaccines?
Unconventional is putting it mildly.
Well, it's certainly a controversial choice.
It's a reminder that elections have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are, well, completely unexpected.
And potentially far-reaching.
We've barely scratched the surface of this post-election world, and it's already clear we're in for a bumpy ride.
Fasten your seatbelts, folks. This is just the beginning. While we're talking about shakeups and surprises and all that,
Yeah.
there's another thing in this newsletter
Okay.
that's worth digging into. It's global. And the timing, well,
Let me guess climate change. With COP29 happening right now, I can only imagine the drama unfolding.
you got it. The UN Climate Conference, everyone's watching, all those world leaders trying to figure out how to tackle the climate crisis, and then, bam, Trump's back in the White House.
Talk about awkward.
The newsletter mentions this prediction from the EU, their climate monitoring agency. They're saying 2024 is practically guaranteed to be the hottest year on record.
Not great.
No, not at all. And they're saying we're going to blow past that 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. You remember the one outlined in the Paris Agreement? The one Trump pulled the U.S. out of.
Oh, yeah, can't forget that.
So you've got scientists around the world sounding the alarm bells.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest players on the global stage is basically saying, climate change, fake news, we're sticking with oil and gas.
It's like a recipe for disaster.
It really is. It sets up this clash of, I don't know, ideologies, priorities on a global scale.
Yeah, and it's not just about the environment anymore, right? We're talking global leadership, economic interests. Who has the power in a world that's changing so fast?
Exactly. It's all connected. And it makes you wonder, what's next? I mean, it's easy to get caught up in all the doom and gloom when you read about, heat waves and the floods and the ice caps melting.
Pretty stuff.
But I think there's also a real opportunity here, Maybe other countries will step up, take the lead on climate action, show some real leadership.
Yeah, maybe this is the push they needed. Like, okay, the U.S. isn't going to do it, so we have to.
And the newsletter kind of hints at that. The EU, they're already saying they're moving forward with their climate goals no matter what the U.S. does.
Yeah.
And you see businesses and investors all over the world shifting towards sustainability, green energy, even with the politics being what they are.
So maybe, just maybe, this could be a catalyst for change.
A global reset.
Yeah, where other countries kind of step out of the U.S.'s shadow and forge their own path, a more sustainable one.
It's a possibility worth exploring, and it connects to this bigger theme that I see running through the whole newsletter.
What's that?
The idea that change, even when it seems bad, can also create new opportunities. Open doors that wouldn't have opened otherwise.
Okay, I'm trying to stay optimistic here, but there's one thing in this newsletter that is truly freaking me out. The potential for political retribution.
Oh, yeah.
Is that Trump's been talking about using the FBI and the Justice Department to, settle scores.
That's a scary thought.
It's terrifying. It's like the integrity of our institutions, the rule of law, it's all hanging by a thread.
It raises a lot of red flags. The idea that a president could use law enforcement to target his enemies, that's not democracy, that's...
authoritarianism.
Exactly.
And it's not like this is a new concern, right? We saw glimpses of this during his first term.
Oh, for sure. Remember all those investigations he launched against his opponents? The attacks on the media, the way he tried to undermine the courts. It's like a pattern of behavior.
A disregard for the norms, the rules, the very things that make a democracy work.
It's like he's saying, I'm above the law. And that sets a dangerous precedent.
It's easy to dismiss this as like conspiracy theories or whatever.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that democracies are fragile.
They are.
It takes constant work, constant vigilance to protect them. We can't let our guard down, not even for a second.
It's a good reminder for all of us. We have to stay engaged, hold our leaders accountable.
Okay, deep breath. Time for a mental gear shift, because the next part of this newsletter is equally mind-blowing, but in a completely different way. It's about the demographics of the election, the unexpected shifts that helped put Trump back in office. And I have to say, some of these numbers are making me question everything.
Like what?
Well, first, there's this huge drop in support for Harris among Latino voters. Her margin was like 6 points?
6 points.
6 points. Compared to Biden's 33-point lead in 2020 and Clinton's 38 points back in 2016.
Wow, that's a significant shift.
What happened? I mean, we're talking about a really diverse community, so there's no simple answer.
Of course not. But there are some potential explanations.
Like what?
Well, economic anxiety is a big one. A lot of Latino voters are struggling with rising costs, stagnant wages, the basic stuff.
Making ends meet.
Exactly. And if they feel like the Democrats aren't addressing those concerns, they might be more open to other options.
Right, right. And then there's the cultural aspect. Some say the Democrats' messaging on social issues, things like gender identity and LGBTQ rights, that might not be resonating with some Latino voters who are more socially conservative.
It's a reminder that political parties need to do a better job of connecting with diverse communities, really understanding their needs and concerns.
Yeah, one size doesn't fit all.
Exactly. But here's a trend that's even more perplexing. The newsletter says Trump actually gained ground in majority black counties. His margin went up by 5.5 points.
Wait, seriously?
That's what the data shows. And it challenges some of those traditional assumptions about black voters always voting Democrat.
Yeah, there's this idea that they're a monolithic bloc.
But that's not the reality. Black voters, like any other group, are influenced by a whole range of factors.
Economic concerns, social values, their perceptions of the
They're
candidates.
complicated.
And let's be real, the Democrats haven't always delivered on their promises to Black communities. There's still work to be done on issues like systemic racism, economic inequality, criminal justice reform.
And if Black voters feel like their concerns are being ignored or dismissed, they might be more willing to look at other options.
It's a wake-up call for the Democrats.
Absolutely. They can't take any vote for granted.
And it's not just national trends. The newsletter also mentions some interesting shifts in specific cities, like Philadelphia, for example.
What about Philly?
Democrats lost over 50,000 votes there compared to the last election. That's
Yeah.
a big drop.
It is. And it's interesting because Trump actually improved his margins in several other big cities.
So what's going on?
It suggests we need to take a closer look at the dynamics in those urban areas. Voter turnout, demographic shifts, how effective the different campaigns were.
What I find most fascinating about all this is that it makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about how people vote and why. Voters are complex.
They are.
Their motivations are constantly evolving.
And it underscores the importance of engaging with voters, understanding their concerns, and crafting messages that resonate with their experiences.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion here. Every new piece of information just reveals more complexity.
That's what makes it so interesting, right? We're going beyond those superficial headlines and really trying to grasp the messy reality of a world in flux.
And speaking of messy, the next part of this newsletter is about the potential for Trump to, well, let's just say, abuse his power.
Oh, right.
It says he's been talking about using the FBI and the Justice Department to go after his political enemies.
Now, that's a disturbing thought.
It's like something out of a dystopian novel. The
Yeah.
leader consolidating his power, silencing dissent, using the machinery of the state to punish anyone who opposes him.
And we've seen hints of this before. Remember how he attacked the media during his first term? And the judiciary, and how he interfered with law enforcement investigations.
He doesn't seem to have much respect for checks and balances.
No, he doesn't. And it's a dangerous path to go down. When power becomes concentrated in the hands of one person, and that person is willing to use it for personal gain or to silence their critics.
It undermines the very foundations of democracy.
Exactly. And it creates a climate of fear where people are afraid to speak out, afraid to challenge those in power.
We can't let that happen.
We can't. We have to stay vigilant. We have to hold our leaders accountable.
You know, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all this, all the challenges, the potential crises, the uncertainty.
That can be a lot to process.
But I also think it's important to remember that we're not powerless. We have a voice, we have a vote, we have a responsibility to speak out against injustice and defend the values we believe in.
Well said. This deep dive isn't about giving in to despair. It's about empowering ourselves with knowledge so we can make informed choices and take meaningful action.
And sometimes taking action is as simple as having a conversation, sharing information, encouraging others to think critically.
Exactly. We can't solve all the world's problems in one go, but we can plant seeds, spark curiosity, and empower others to be more informed and engaged citizens.
And who knows, maybe some of those seeds will grow into something amazing. Speaking of amazing, there's one last section in this newsletter that I want to touch on before we wrap things up.
What's that?
Climate change. And, well, it's not exactly a happy ending.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
The newsletter highlights a couple of things that are really concerning, even knowing everything we already know about the state of the planet.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, there's this prediction from the EU's climate monitoring agency. They're saying 2024 is pretty much guaranteed to be the hottest year on record. We're talking exceeding that 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold from the Paris Agreement.
So we're already seeing the impact of climate change, and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. And what's frustrating is that we have the solutions, the technology, the knowledge to fix this, but what we lack is the political will.
Especially with Trump back in the White House.
Exactly. He's spent years denying climate change, rolling back environmental
It
protections.
feels like we're moving backwards.
It really does. And it's not just the U.S. Climate change is a global crisis.
And it's going to take a global effort to solve it. We need a movement that goes beyond borders and political parties. People demanding action from their leaders, holding corporations accountable, making sustainable choices in their own lives.
Yeah, we need a collective wake-up call.
It's time to get serious about this.
I know it's easy to feel helpless when you think about the scale of the problem.
It's overwhelming.
But we can't give up. We have to remember that individual actions do make a difference, especially when millions of people are doing them.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps. Support businesses that are sustainable, reduce your carbon footprint, advocate for better policies,
Educate yourself and others.
spread the word.
And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us do our part, we can turn things around.
We have to try.
Phew, okay. I gotta say, after all that, my head's spinning.
Yeah, no kidding. This newsletter was like information overload.
It was like a fire hose of what ifs and oh no's, and I don't even know.
Definitely a lot to process.
Yeah.
But hey, I think we managed to pull out some key takeaways, some things for our listener to keep in mind as we, head into this uncharted territory.
Yeah, and you know what? Amidst all the crazy, I'm actually feeling a bit more prepared. Like, forewarned is forearmed, right?
I like that. It's
Oh.
not about pretending we can predict the future.
Right.
It's about understanding the possibilities, the potential risks, and, well, trying to make smart choices along the way.
So let's do a quick recap for our listener. Bring it all home. What are the big, like, flashing neon signs we need to be watching out for in this post-election world?
Okay, well, first up, we've got the economic landscape.
Yeah.
Trump's all about those protectionist policies, those tariffs.
Right.
And those are going to have a ripple effect, no doubt, on
Yes.
businesses, consumers, the whole shebang.
Right.
So we'll have to see how that plays out in the global market. What does it mean for inflation, for prices on, well, pretty much everything?
Yeah, good point. And then there's the Elon Musk factor. I mean, who knows if he'll actually join the administration or not,
Right.
but he's definitely a force to be reckoned with. That whole idea of him shaking up government efficiency, I mean, it's exciting and kind of scary at the same time.
It really is. It just shows you how much personalities matter, especially in
Wow.
politics.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of big personalities, we can't forget about the billionaires.
Ah, yes, the billionaires.
They're not just sitting on the sidelines anymore. They're shaping the conversation, influencing elections, controlling the narrative through their, like, media kingdoms.
It raises some big questions about, power and democracy. Can a system truly be democratic when so much influence is concentrated in the hands of so few?
It's something we need to keep talking about, that's for sure. And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, the one we can't ignore no matter how hard we try,
Yeah.
the climate crisis.
Yep, not going away.
The newsletter, it highlights some pretty scary predictions, record-breaking temperatures, the effects we're already seeing around the world.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that environmental issues are deeply intertwined with everything else. The economy, politics, global stability.
And with Trump back in the White House, well, let's just say I'm not feeling super optimistic about our chances of turning things around.
It's definitely a setback.
And then there's that last thing, the thing that really keeps me up at night, the possibility of Trump using his power, not for good. The idea of him using the FBI and the Justice Department to go after his enemies, that's just, well, it's chilling.
It is. It's a reminder that power can be a dangerous thing, especially when it's in the wrong hands.
It's like, what happens to democracy, to the rule of law, when those in power decide they're above it all? It's a scary thought.
It is. But, I think this whole deep dive, it's not about succumbing to fear or despair.
Right.
It's about arming ourselves with information, with knowledge, so we can be active participants in shaping the future,
Yeah.
not passive bystanders.
Exactly. So, to our listener, as you absorb all this information, all these possibilities, we want to leave you with this. Don't just sit back and let the world happen to you. Get involved. Question everything. Connect the dots. And most importantly, use your voice, use your vote to stand up for the values you believe in.
The future is not set in stone. We all have a role to play in shaping it.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and as always, keep diving deep. Thanks for listening.